Hey, what's your favorite color? Is it red? Is it blue? Is it yellow? Is it orange? Is it green? Is it a warm color or is it a cool color? What is the best, warm or cool? Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Warm, good guy. Oh, I don't know. Red, he's warm. Maybe he's a bad guy. How about blue? Oh, honorable, steadfast. Can you have a cool blue? Well, yeah, all blues are cool, right? Or are there some warm blues? Yeah. Well, we're going to learn about that and other things like intensity. We're going to do a multi-part video, multi-videos that cover this subject of color. And this one, we're going to discuss intensity of color. So, for example, if your favorite color was red, and we have a red apple here, where on that apple is the color red going to be most intense, more pure, most chroma, right out of the tube intensity of color? Is it going to be close to where the light hits it, or down in the shadow on the shadow side? What about yellow? We've got a lemon here. Is it going to be most intensely yellow, most pure, vibrant, intense, chromatic yellow, close to the spot of light, or kind of getting close to the shadow or down in the shadow? There are rules. We're talking about representational artwork here, where we're actually trying to represent something in the real world that we all recognize, and how color works as we make that attempt. Now, as we go into other videos, we're going to be covering shadow, the cast shadow. If you have a red apple, what's the family hue that's going to play some part in that cast shadow? What color? Hue, color, kind of synonymous terms, but there's some difference, and we'll discuss that as well. We're going to go over some vocabulary, just use it in the process of making these videos. We're going to talk about neutralized colors. When you mix a pure color out of the tube in any way, you're going to neutralize it to some degree. It will no longer be that pure, intense color that goes out of the tube. So, I learned at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art in Philadelphia from a teacher named Renee Folk, who is a fabulous teacher and an incredibly wonderful human being. And she, in one of our classes, gave information that is here covered on this chart that I formalized it in. You can see that, well, if you had time to read this, I'll put it in the description in this video so that you can download it or do whatever you'd like, but you have access to this information. So, in effect, when it comes to where a color is most intense on an object, like red here, it's not going to be right next to the light, because right next to the light, you've added white to red. Maybe a little yellow. It's getting lighter there. You're getting away from that deep, rich, beautiful red. It's going to be most intensely red just before you breach that tangent into the shadow side. So here's an example of that as relates to this chart. So these are comparing these common colors to the different values of gray. You can see they're here. There's our gray chart, our value chart. So red's intensity, we've got red right here. It's going to be the most intense on a red object in some natural, representational, realistic setting in relationship to about midway through the value chart here. So now you can see up here, yellow, really intense yellow, is going to be most intense when it's closer to the light source, not down in the darker aspects of something. So if we look at this apple, we can have some light right across this top, the way the lights are hitting it, and that will be where the lightest value is. And then as you move away from that, or get over into these yellows over here, these yellow greens, that will be lighter value than anywhere else on the apple. But as it gets down further into the shadow, it gets darker in value. And that would be these values further down here, getting more dark. But up here in this mid-range, closer to the tangent where the shadow, the light side of the apple and the shadow side of the apple meet, just on the light side, that's where the red is going to be most intense on the apple. That's how you can relate this chart to the light and dark part of whatever object it is that you're working with. So, you're going to have access to that, and we're going to paint 4 different paintings, not today, not in this video, but one today, and I think we'll start with red, maybe the yellow, maybe the red, we'll see. We'll get started here in a minute. But I'm going to do a red fruit or vegetable, a yellow one, a blue one. There's blueberries, you know, but I might turn a purple eggplant into a blue one, or I might paint a blue apple. The point is, I'm going to show you where on that blue object the intensity of the color will be greatest, the most pure, warmest, luscious blue. All right. And then we'll do one, maybe green over there on the 4th one. So that's what we're going to do. And now we're going to get started with that. I hope you enjoy this ride. It's going to be informative. Okay, so I'm going to start by drawing on here with this piece of vine charcoal. It's kind of funny. I didn't know why they called it vine charcoal for a long time, and I decided it must be because it's made out of grapevines and they burn it, and sure enough, I'm pretty sure that's it. So anyway, it's just a terrific way to lay out a painting. Say if you, let's say we're going to do this apple. Let's do an apple. Let's say if we, let's say if I get it off over here somewhere and I don't really like it there, I decided, oh, I shouldn't have put it so far to the left, then I can just take a piece of paper towel. It's easy to just wipe that off. If you had compressed charcoal, it is certainly not going to wipe off near so easily. However, there's a nice little bit of a shadow of what I had drawn on there. So that helps me not make the same mistake. So let's say take our apple and put it in here someplace. Let's say maybe off center this way. We can get that part of it there, little stem, whatever. Color change, round it off. Gonna end up with some kind of shadow. Let's see, that's not got a lot of shadow, but we're going to give it more shadow. So we're going to assume our light source is over here. I'm going to have a light on here someplace. And that'll cause us shadow to extend further over and take up more of this canvas space. All right. Now again, the purpose of this is not to paint the most gorgeous apple, which I wouldn't mind if we did, but we're talking about the intensity of color. I've taped this little chart up here for our reference for this. So red's down here, so in the darker, not the darkest, but close to where that tangent going from the light side of the apple to the dark side of the apple, the most beautiful, pure color is going to be right in there. So I'm going to start out with this new fresh number 4 Filbert synthetic brush. And here's the paint I'm using. Here's the palette. This is not my standard palette, but it's a palette that I use when I'm going to teach something and I put a lot more colors than I normally would. I certainly wouldn't have this many reds on my palette as a rule, but it's going to be useful to us today. So I've just added some more white. We're going to be dealing with reds and different tones like what we might see in an apple. So we're going to deal with darks and lights and intensity of color. Okay, so let's presume we're going to do the opposite of what's happening on what we're seeing at this apple. we're going to let the light be over here instead of being more over here and the dark over there. So we're just going to cast the light that way. All right, so I'm going to pull this, let's see, I could take this sort of a cad red medium sort of tone. Say if I'm going to take it down through, oh, let's see, I'm starting to look at the apple. We're going to take our shadow this way, so like that. So we're going to have some nice intense color. Maybe we can get some more of a cad red that's not quite so dark, and we can play with our color in this way. Now if we want to darken our red, I'm going to just take some raw umber to that darker red, and we can start pushing into that tangent of a shadow where we shift from the light side of the apple to the dark side of the apple. So we're going to start moving into here. I could take a little bit of ultramarine blue. That could be kind of fun to mix with our red. Let's see how we like that as we get into the shadow side of the apple down in here. Start giving it more of an apple form than just a ball. Oh, that's a pretty round apple. All right, so that kind of gets us started. We can kind of blend that together as we shift values more softly. And then I'll mix a little more raw umber, a little more ultramarine into here, because this is going to be a darker portion of the shadow. Won't be that dark, of course. And then down here along the bottom, we can get some deeper shadow again, because we're getting some reflected light up into this area, or we presumably would be if this was actually set up this way. Okay, so now I'll just use a paper towel and get a little of this paint out of my brush, and we'll shift to moving into a lighter tone of these reds. Say, for example, we've got this Azo coral already on the palette, so we can put a little of that on here. And that's pretty intense warm color itself, but we're just going to add a little white to it, maybe some of this raw sienna, and temper it down a bit as we get some various tones into this apple that are different than what we've applied so far. Now, since this is the light side of the apple, I'm going to pull that in a little bit further. I'm starting to mess up my colors putting them together like that, but it looks all right to me. So we'll get more of this. Let's see, where did that Azo color? Well, let's just take some orange with some raw sienna and pull that into here. Like that. Now let's lighten it up a little bit with some white. Mix into those colors. Gotta lighten this up around that light part of the apple somewhat. Now as we dip back down into where the stem is, I got some, let's see, I'm gonna have to break the skin on this green I'm about to use. It's gotten dry and dried with the skin on top. That ought to help us out. So if we take a little bit of that, and then we bring that in here, let it move its way out into the apple a little bit. Now I've lost a little bit of my intensity of my chroma color here, so I'm just going to add some of that back in there and blend it. It doesn't have to be an exact band of that color. I've got too much on my brush, so and take some of that off and then pull this dark back up into it. And we'll get kind of a feel for that transition from light into shadow. But you can see that the intensity of red on this red item is greatest just where it goes to the last part of the light and starts getting into the tangent of this, where it's going into shadow on the apple. Sort of like that. All right. Now let's take a, I don't know, let's get some of these nice colors back in there. Get some of that streaks of lovely apple color coming toward the stem. Let's see, less so on this side. That'll do. Get some of these paper towels I've been messing up out of the way here. Okay, so now we can get a little, let's say, get a little darker. Since the dark color I have all moistened up is raw umber, I'll just add some of this light intense green here into that. You can see me doing it right here and come down into this part right there where we're getting down into the deeper recesses of where that stem goes into the apple. All right, and then we can take, say, a little bit of, I don't know what this is, some yellow ochre here, and add that to this green and let it come up into there a bit. I think I'll add a little bit of white to that, lighten that up, maybe a little yellow. Let's get some of this onto yellow. And pull that into there. Blur it in with some of that red. Kind of the nature feel of it. All right. Maybe we can tone that down. How can we tone that down? Let's take a little bit of this raw umber here and some of that green. Well, we've already got those two together, so let's just add some white to that. Maybe a little more yellow to that. And get some not so intense colors here. Interesting. Stick them in there. All right, then let's get this yellow going again with some white in it. Maybe some of this green that doesn't have the raw umber in it. And lighten up this bit back here. It kind of gets a little heavy holding that palette up like that. So now let's take maybe a little yellow streak of this and maybe this tone here and pull it down into here. That's kind of nice. Little bits like that. Let's take some of this light green again and do this similar thing to it and neutralize it down with this. It's still kind of intense because of the two colors that we used to get there, so let's bring some of this brown in and see if we can't neutralize it a little further and then lighten it back up again. And just get this back here to be lighter. I dragged a little too much red into it. I'm going to lighten it up some more and put that back there. And push it around in that red so it looks like it's more organic. All right. Maybe we could pull a little more of this red again, but neutralize like this with this blended color and pull it up the outside edge of this apple. Give some curvature to that apple, darken it up a little bit. And come back at it down here. All right, so we've got that nice, beautiful red at our tangent. Got the intensity of red that we like in an apple. Makes us want to get one and bite it and enjoy the juices that are inside there. Now we could take a little white and tuck it along here a little bit. Like it's catching some light from someplace. Maybe that's a little intense, but you get the idea. You could soften that a little bit. And then we'll put in a little stem. We'll get back to these darker tones again right here. And just put a little stem in there. And then get some lighter bits of the same sort of flavor of color. See if we can get something we like here. Not sure we're getting anything particularly lovely there, but we'll top the stem with it. Let's see what we think of that. No, it just doesn't even show up. So let's get lighter. What color would go good against that? I don't know. See if that gives us a stem top. Come back with this. Dark like that, and because our light's coming from over here, we probably ought to put this bit of shade on it, and not shadow shade, but this shade of color. Oh well, looks enough like an apple. So we've got our intensity of color, we've got our shadow, we've got some reflected light coming back in here. It's nice and lustrous, and we have more light on this side of the apple. It's not really intense light, but it's enough that we're going to create a shadow out of it. But we're not going to paint the shadow today because that's going to be part of another video where we go into what color of shadow should we put on this apple. So that's it. So we used fine charcoal to lay it out. You just use these little Richardson's panels for the paintings. I'm using a number 4 synthetic filbert. I like a filbert brush, I just do. And that's it for this video. Subscribe, click whatever you want to click, and put comments and share, please. I'll talk to you in the next one. This will be number 1 of, say, 4 videos on color. Have a great day.